hotels traditionally rely on their housekeeping staff to serve as their sort of human smoke detectors. We'd rather have a mist detection than falsely accuse somebody. It was supposed to be a couple for like a little weekend getaway, turned out to be like a big frat party.
This is the Future of the Future show. I am your host, Mateo Berbejicio. Hotels are facing a growing challenge that many guests never see: the rise of vaping and cannabis use inside hotel properties. As smoking habits evolve, cannabis laws change and guest expectations shift. Traditional no-smoking policies are becoming harder to enforce. The result is a new operational problem that affects everything from housekeeping and maintenance to guest satisfaction and brand reputation. Joining me today is Mike Linton, CRO and General Counsel at Rest, a company helping hotels tackle this challenge with technology designed specifically for the realities of modern hospitality. We will explore what's happening inside hotels today, why existing approaches are falling short, how Rest is solving the problem, and where hospitality, guest behavior, and cannabis policy are headed over the next decade. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Mike, let's start with the real world problem. What's happening inside hotels today regarding vaping and cannabis use, and why has this become such a difficult issue for operators to manage?
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting. I 15 years ago, I was a hotel operations guy myself, and much of what was taking place then is taking place, today. It's just, amplified, I think, due to the sort of evolution of state by state laws passing the legalization of, cannabis for recreational purposes, vape, and the nature of it just always being readily available. Unlike a cigarette, that's like a, ritual where you have to light it, smoke the whole thing, extinguish it. Vape is just always there, ready to go. And it's just interesting that it's the same challenge, it's just amplified. So most hotels are non-smoking, as I'm sure most people know, right? Nobody typically finds smoking rooms aside from maybe a couple of casinos. But what we found is that that the technology and means of enforcing the smoke-free policy hasn't really evolved with guest behavior.
Yeah. And that brings us to our next question, which is why are traditional non-smoking policies breaking down? And is it just because of that? It's harder to detect, laws are evolving, guest behavior is changing faster than hotels can adapt?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that, right? The policies themselves aren't the problem, right? Don't smoke in our rooms.
Right.
Don't smoke inside. It's really just that it's become much more challenging to keep up with it. Even in the, historically, when it was just cigarettes and traditional combusted smoke, it was still difficult to enforce that policy because a guest smokes, many times all that's left behind as evidence is the smell of smoking. And hotels traditionally rely on their housekeeping staff to serve as their sort of human smoke detectors. So basically, housekeeper smells smoke. The next thing they're supposed to do is act like Sherlock Holmes and try to find evidence of that smoking and capture that evidence like a little mini detective, which is far and few between. Most people, if they're going to do something, they're breaking the rules. They try to cover their tracks a little bit. Most aren't as careless enough to leave ashtrays full of cigarette butts and things like that. So, that's the challenge we find with, every hotel that we're talking to that's not using a technology like ours, that they have a policy, people break it, and it's just become more and more frustrating, especially with marijuana, because marijuana, you smell it everywhere. Cigarettes stink, marijuana just travels. It's potent.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So tell us about Rest. How does it work in practice, and what problems does it solve for hotel staff and guests?
Sure, yeah. So we offer a replacement to that old manual process. So instead of relying on housekeeping to run around and be your little Sherlock Holmeses, in addition to their real job cleaning rooms and turning them over. Um, our technology involves a hardware component, simple IoT device that's going inside the room. It's reading various environmental factors, air quality metrics, sending that up to our AWS cloud-hosted platform 24/7, 365, and we can identify when smoking or vaping activity took place in the room, and we always create a digital record proving that it took place. And it's dialed into where it would never mistake things like shower steam or any of the common in-room activities of a guest. Just traditional combusted smoke or vape. It'll trigger detection.
Now, you are the CRO of REST, right? Tell me, it's something that it's very, very interesting to me is it must be interesting for you when you do a demo, like a live demo, or show your customers the potential of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you have any stories to share there and how you are, that wow moment for your clients?
It's been an interesting ride, right? I mean, because I have a background in hospitality technology. Spent my life sort of in the hospitality sector. I became a lawyer. Get over here, and it really is a unique concept in that seeing it really is believing it. And many times, we find that on-site demonstrations really do help hotels thoroughly understand the way this thing works because I think naturally most people they think of a smoke alarm, right? Like the ones that are in their house, those are life safety devices and they work much differently, right? Like those are really equipped to be, err on the side of caution. They would rather alert you. How many times have you been, cooking and you burn a little something, you forget to turn on the exhaust fan, all the alarms are going off. That's by design, that's on purpose. Our product is kind of the opposite of that, in that we would rather not alert someone. We'd rather have a missed detection than falsely accuse somebody. So we're only, alerting hotels when we have the utmost confidence that smoking or vaping took place. So yeah, we'll go on site, we'll go in the rooms, we'll ask for permission, and it's kind of funny sitting around a bunch of hotel executives in suits, smoking cigarettes and vapes in the rooms, and then we do one room where we'll break out like hair dummies. And because a lot of times guests will say they'll use anything in the book, right? Like I wasn't smoking, I took a shower at that time. So steam the room up, roll, to 80% humidity. It's like a sauna in there when you walk in. Then we'll vape, and you can see humidity rise. Our model doesn't kick in. Then we vape, and it kicks in. So yeah, it's really fun to get out there and kind of interact because there aren't many products that you kind of get to go out there and do something show and tell like that. But it's I really do find that to be the wow factor and sort of, it breaks through now how does this work? They're like, oh, okay, now that makes perfect sense. And it helps these operators, I think, confidently deploy the platform.
Right, 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 right. So what are the downstream consequences when hotels fail to solve this problem?
I think it's going to continue to get worse because if we're being honest, historically, they've kind of failed to solve it over the course of time using the sort of manual process. I think as more and more states legalize recreational marijuana, it'll become a higher priority for hotels. The more the guests become accustomed to actually receiving the promised, advertised smoke-free environment, as more and more hotels adopt solutions like ours and take, that enforcement serious, I think it's going to, ultimately you'll be an outlier if someone comes to your hotel and it, stinks to high heaven and, you're not doing anything to sort of combat that. So I think and I've already seen it over time, just how the industry has started to slowly adopt this. We're approaching 100,000 rooms at this stage. And it continues to just grow rapidly because I think, people like this. They like keeping their property safe and delivering on that guest promise for a clean, smoke-free environment.
What is the origin story of REST? Take us back to the beginning. What insight did the founders have about hospitality operations that made them believe this was a category worth building a company around?
Sure. Yeah. It's quite interesting. I feel like our company, our founders, everything we've built has always been for a practical use case purpose. It wasn't something we just built in a lab like, hey, this is kind of cool. Let's see who we could sell this to. It was always like, I want to build something to address that concern. And when we originally started back in 2015, far before I even joined the company, we were called Noise Aware. And it really kind of rooted. One of the founders owned a bunch of short-term rental properties. He had one of his properties that was supposed to be a couple for like a little weekend getaway, turned out to be like a big frat party. I think it was like $30,000 in damage done to the place, evicted from the building. It was a nightmare. And he said if I only had known that what was going on, I could have stopped it before it was too late. So
Right.
that was what really, that was where our company was born, in Noise Aware. We still service over 30,000 short-term rental customers today, but all that is noise monitoring for short-term rental hosts. They have an app. If decibel levels are going over, preset thresholds, they'll be alerted. They can automatically notify guests to say, hey, you're getting a little loud. It's really become kind of a norm. We pioneered that sector for short-term rentals. And then, funny enough, at Verma, a short-term rental sort of focused conference, there was a hotel group there that approached us and said, hey, what would be great is if you could build something that was maintenance free, could work seamlessly in our hotel, connect with our operations, and enforce smoking. And that's what we set out to do. And it's, I think that really speaks volumes for what's important to hotels, right? They don't want
Right.
something up in their rooms that they have to go up and maintain, constantly, because that ends up, bringing operational drag and overhead. So yeah, our sensors are maintenance free. They auto clean. They'll auto connect to the Wi-Fi if they get kicked off. Really, the hotel, all they have to do is enforce the smoking fee, which is arguably the hardest, thing that needs to be done. But that's well within their expertise and discretion.
So you joined REST later as a CRO and General Counsel. What drew you to REST, and how does your legal and commercial background shape your approach today?
Sure. Like I said, I've been in hospitality. Was a Navy guy, got out of the Navy, moved to Vegas, worked up and down the strip. I'm based here in Las Vegas. Started working on the tech side. I really enjoyed the industry. And even when I went to law school, I wanted to stay in it. But my decision to come over to this company was really because, it's exciting to join a company that is really, paving a path. We truly are pioneering a new vertical for the industry. I've worked for tons of online travel agencies, SaaS platforms and revenue distribution, CRSs, and that's commoditized, to some extent. So it's been really, I think, interesting to train the market, on this product, and it's I get to exercise my legal skills and the contracting and scheduling everything and setting things up. But the real fun is building things, and that's exactly what we're doing over here.
Right, right. Um, Last question to you, and very important as we look into the future. Where do you see hospitality tech, guest expectations, and cannabis and vaping policies heading over the next decade?
Sure. I think that I hate to use probably the buzzword that everybody's in every single one of your podcasts, but AI is obviously reshaping the way we live. And I think that hotel systems are going to become, much more streamlined over time. And with AI, right, everything from their websites to their booking channels to the way they operate on a day-to-day basis, I think that's going to, you know, change things from where they're out seeking for problems to address to where they're able to surface them quickly and get in front of them. And I think our technology fits perfectly sort of within, that new sort of vision for the future that I think every hospitality, company out there is absolutely exploring how to incorporate AI for more efficiencies. And, our product, I think, fits perfectly within that broader strategic objective.
Mike, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing so much about your story and
Of
rest and what
course.
you are doing and how you're helping in the hospitality industry. I appreciate it. I hope that we stay in touch and get to do this again sometime in the future.
Same to you. Thanks, Mateo. Have a great day.